Hi, I'm Joshua Kemble, and this is my Vloggins. So I am heading to work, where I work as a full-time art director, and I had a crazy active weekend. Yesterday we did the indie review show, and then the IRS after party with Corey Kerr. The indie review show you can check out on irsagency.com, but we went over one of my favorite cartoonists of all time, George Harriman, and Crazy and Ignatz, and I think it was the 1925 to 1926 collection released by Fantagraphics with like beautiful Chris Ware graphic design on the cover. Anyhow, so go check that out. But now I'm gonna basically vlog and talk a little bit about this weekend and other stuff. So I finally broke down and got a bike. I've been thinking about a bike for a while, and just realizing that would be a really good way for me to get exercise for my heart. And I needed something like jogging or something like that to kind of fill in the blanks for the times that I'm not exercising. I'm just doing rowing, which I do every other day, where I do rowing and then I do weights. But this is great because it's mostly legs, and so it'll work out my legs, and also it'll give me like an aerobic exercise that keeps the heart nice and healthy. So there's that. So I got like a really cheap bike. I know people who are hardcore bike people are gonna besmirch it, but I just got like a decent bike at Walmart. So it's like a really it's not the best bike, but at the same time, and I know it's like a Walmart bike, and I try not to shop at Walmart too much, but at the end of the day, just don't have the massive amounts of money to like invest in like a really legit bike. Even like a bottom tier bike, from like when I used to actually bike ride a lot, and I never was like a racing bicyclist. I used to commute using a bike for about, I mean, gosh, that was like a good portion of my life. When I was in college, I never could afford a car or the insurance for a car. So what I would do instead was like, I would bike everywhere. And so I would bike from downtown Long Beach all the way to campus and so on. And then sometimes I'd take the bus, like when I lived in Huntington, I used to take the bus, put the bike on the rack in front of the bus. I was one of those people. I used to just pretty much bike everywhere. And then I had a bike called a Trek, which was like a great bottom tier bike. It's not like the highest end bike you can have, but it's a very durable one, and it's a hybrid, right, which is important if you're doing like city traveling, to have like a hybrid, because a mountain bike's great for like off-roading and stuff like that, like if you're going to be on like trails and that kind of thing. And a road bike's great if you're just going to be on the road. A hybrid kind of allows you, like if you're traveling across the city and you hit an area that has some terrain, you can navigate that terrain and still get from point A to point B. Anyhow, all of that way outside of the budget of what I'd want to spend until I get in the habit of it. So I just kind of went with like a decent bike from Walmart, as decent as you can get from Walmart. So picked up a bike. Aside from that, because I think exercise is really important for my creative output too, because if I'm really out of shape, my creativity and creative output is going to suffer because I don't have the wherewithal to kind of like see it through. I don't know if that makes sense, but so that's part of it. Another thing I did was went to specific comic shops, and I didn't have as much luck at all with these visits, although the majority of the shops I got the manager and the owner's contact information, and I need to remember today to reach out to the managers and store owners, like by email or call, just to see if they're interested in carrying 2 stories, which is hard. Like, it's hard to contact and stay in touch with comic shops when you have like a 9 to 5 job as an art director which even if it's just 9 to 5, it's like that pretty much takes you out of commission throughout most of the week. So yeah, so there will be that. The other reason I don't think I had as much success is generally Mondays just seem like a really bad day to do the comic visits. So if you guys are out there and you're doing kind of the same thing, keep that in mind. Yeah, so that'll be that. I'm getting a call and I'm just gonna kind of ignore it because I think it's from like a telemarketer. But we'll just let it ring out. I'm not sure if you guys hear the audio of that, but that's just inevitably going to kind of happen. Alright, so for some reason that call canceled my video recording, which is really strange. I'm not sure why exactly that's happening. But yeah, so yeah, my plan, like if you're going to be following a plan like I do, where you're going to be going to different comic shops, and kind of visiting and getting to know the retailers and seeing if they're interested in carrying your comic, I would recommend don't do it on Mondays, at least in the US. It just it doesn't seem like the most ideal day. Saturdays work pretty well for me. I think ideally if you didn't have like a day job where you're occupied all the time, I'd probably pick like Wednesdays, because Wednesdays are usually the busiest days for comic shops, and it seems like the owners, because most comic shops are very small mom and pop places, the owners like to be there on the busiest day just to support their team, make sure everything's getting stocked, all of that stuff. So if I were picking, if I could have any day to do it, it would be Wednesdays. Okay, so that's a little bit on the comic signings and the progress on those so far. On a plus note too, there is a comic shop in Long Beach that I think I might end up doing, setting up a signing at, and I didn't stop by their shop. They actually just added me on Instagram, and I just messaged them when they added me on Instagram. I was like, hey, you guys just added me, I'd be interested in doing a signing for you guys, and they were like, yep, let's do it. Wednesdays are good. You know, and so we're kind of starting the conversation to try to figure out like what day would work best for both of us. So hopefully that'll get booked. And that's all on 2 Stories Book 1 kind of progress. And if you're curious to see that comic that I'm trying to kind of get out there, check out 2 Stories Book 1. You can just look up 2 Stories by Joshua Kemble on Amazon, and that will take you to the book that I'm trying to get people to buy. So, and also it's a graphic memoir about faith and mental illness. I put a lot of time and effort and love into that book. So there's that. Autism diagnosis update. I am looking to get the assessment for autism because, you know, for the past few years, like just kind of, my son is autistic. He was diagnosed pretty young. He's high functioning, and through reading a lot of the literature and going through sort of his autism journey, I've started to realize that I more than likely am probably high functioning autistic. Just a lot, like pretty much all of the traits that are common with that are stuff that where I was just ticking off every box. It's not like your kind of random Google search where you're like, what's wrong with me? And you look at it and you see like 4 things and you're like, oh yeah, that's me. It's like, for me, everything in it has resonated with my experience to the point where a lot of the time when I watch somebody even talk about what it's like dealing with high functioning autism, I'm just like, well, that's just life. Like, that's just what everybody deals with. And I've mentioned that to my wife, and this has happened for like, you know, we're talking like 5 or 6 years of dealing with this with my own son, because he was diagnosed at like 1-ish, like a little bit after he was 1, or maybe it was 2, I don't know, but at least 5 years we've been going on that journey with him. And when I brought that up and been like, isn't this everyone's experience? Like, my wife has been like, no, it is absolutely not. Like, that's not what everybody feels like. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'm not neurotypical. Like my experience is not neurotypical. And so I'm trying to get a diagnosis. I shouldn't say diagnosis, because I don't mind actually if I don't have it. I kind of don't mind if I do have it. Like, I don't actually see it as like this big stigmatic, like terrible thing. But it is definitely something that makes a lot of sense of the experiences that I've had my whole life. It just kind of, they fit that. And I don't feel like it's like a square peg in a round hole kind of fitting. It's more like I'm a square peg and I've been looking at all these round holes and I have no idea like why I feel so separate from entry to like these round holes as a square peg. And then finally in reading about high functioning autism, it's like I see like a giant square hole that's like sized perfectly, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like my square personality fits squarely in that. Like it matches. So I'm interested in getting assessed for it and seeing if there's truth to that, because I'm about 99% certain that that's the case. Now, that certainty, I want to be really clear, didn't come out of nowhere. This is a suspicion that I've gradually been having for like 5 to 6 years. The more I read the literature about it, the more I try to connect with the experience of my son going through it, and the more I observe just his behaviors and like the things in his personality that are very linked with autism, like they resonate with me a lot because they mirror my own experience, and not just like mirror it like, oh, this is my son, we have a lot in common, but like, oh, this is my son, and like I did that exact same thing, like the flapping behaviors, like a lot of stuff like that I did when I was a kid. The trouble moderating like the volume of my voice, like the interjecting and cutting people off in conversations and being obsessed with like specific minute topics, repetitive behaviors that a lot of why I do cartooning is because I love repetitive behaviors, and I'm obsessed with cartooning. Like it's just like it's just something I'm really interested in, and I can't not do because I probably am autistic. So anyhow, which doesn't mean I'm a bad cartoonist. It also doesn't mean like I'm a bad person. It doesn't mean I'm different, like a terrible person. It actually just means I'm autistic. Like, I mean, that's highly the likelihood of what I'll find out from this. So anyhow, there's a whole bunch of other stuff too that like I like, again, my wife and I, just for fun, kind of took a little like there's a bunch of quizzes that are online, but there's some that actually match to a T the diagnosis criteria that they use for autism. And anytime we've done it, like my wife will get like 19 and I'll get like 40 out of 50 or 41 out of 50, which means I'm like really highly autistic. But what's weird is I'm not trying for that result. Like I really actually, even when the last one I took, I literally had that moment with my wife where I was like, hey, look, I don't even think this is the right test, right? Like, this just seems like it's for people. Like, this is just for humans, right? Isn't this everyone? Like, doesn't everyone have trouble, like, maintaining eye contact and feel exhausted after social interactions and, you know, gear conversations towards specific interests and not read emotional cues of people when, like, socially, like, really find it difficult to understand, like, what exactly people are thinking, or anyhow, so whole bunch of stuff. Point being, like, I just think it's really important to get assessed with it, and see if there's anything to it. I'm pretty sure there is, and I'm not trying to find out to like solve. And this is where it gets really frustrating, because if I talk about this, people, I think, assume that I'm trying to solve some kind of underlying like discontentment or dissatisfaction, like, or depression or anxiety or something like that. And I wrote a whole book about mental illness, you know, which is 2 stories. Like, it deals pretty heavily with like mental illness, with my own struggles with depression, with you know, like people in my family's struggle with panic disorder, things like that. But the thing is, like, currently in my life, like, I'm not super depressed. I'm not like experiencing a mass amount of anxiety. Like, I'm just resonating a lot with this thing that seems like it matches my identity. Like, my identity as a human being, even things that cause me depression, like obsessive modes of thinking, sort of like obsessive back planning, just a lot of things that like are part of my personality, I'm finding happen to align a lot with the autistic experience. And this is not everyone's autistic experience. It's a spectrum, right? This is just, but it definitely is like, it's become more and more clear that this is probably something that's been part of who I am for a very long time before they had a name for it, right? So basically, I was gonna get my first kind of like start the process of like getting an assessment, like a diagnostic, not a diagnosis of it, on Monday. And they had sent me to the completely wrong person. And even the person that they sent me to was like, I have no idea like why they sent you to me. Like, I'm here to deal with like people with disorders or like panic or anxiety or like depression or like mental health like struggles. I'm not here to like diagnose people with like underlying conditions like autism. Like, you'd need to actually see like an autism specialist. I have no idea why they referred you to me. So it's been like a 6-month journey with my insurance company, and where I go, like the hospital, or sorry, I don't even know the term for it, but it's like my provider, my healthcare provider, that's the term. It's been like a 6-month journey so far, and now it'll be a 7-month, right? Because they had booked me with the wrong person. So now, like, the first available appointment to even start the assessment process has been pushed to like next month, mid next month. So I do want to be really transparent about just sort of my experience with it, because I feel like there's a lot of people within my age range who find this out in a very similar way, where they have a kid who needs like speech therapy, they need a few extra things in order to kind of be able to get a kickstart on like their ability to socialize and socially interact, and so they don't fall behind in school, so that they aren't kind of misjudged for like weird behaviors that are not they're not neurotypical behaviors, and so they have all these interventions for these kids, including my own, that just kind of help them have like an even start, like be able to have like an equal chance at like success in life, because autism can really make like functioning as an adult like very difficult. And there's things they've figured out that like if intervention happens early enough with kids, especially with high functioning autism, like there's a high likelihood that they can actually live like a relatively normal life. And it also helps them understand themselves, understand their quirks, understand why they're a little different from like, you know, your average Joe. And like, anyhow, it's not an uncommon experience for parents who've been going through that process with their kids to start seeing like, holy crap, like all of these things that my kid has, I have, like, and I had at their age. But like the era that we grew up in, they didn't even know what that was. You were just kind of strange. They didn't really have a good way to they didn't have a heavy knowledge of it. And it's only recently that they've really started figuring out what this thing is. And they still don't know fully what it is, but they at least have like a name for it and have treatments for it, and like different ways to at least have an assessment for it, right? That didn't exist when I was a kid. And so there's a lot of people in my generation that are finding out this exact same way that I am, and they're being met with like a medical system and a mental health system that has no idea how to even begin the process. And so it can be really alienating and frustrating to go through. Just since talking publicly about it, just on my Facebook and stuff like that, what's been cool is the most awesome people, the people with the best responses, like the people who have had the most reasonable kind of takes on it, are people who've all actually gone through this same journey, and had to go through this whole crazy system just to kind of get, like, even just to start the process just takes forever. So that's been interesting. And I definitely think enlightening, and also something I want to publicly talk about to kind of destigmatize, because I'm all about destigmatization. I've struggled with depression for a lot of my life. Oddly enough, that might be very, very much linked to autism, which of course is going to grow like a sense of alienation from your fellow human being, because you're not neurotypical. And so it's kind of like this square and round thing that I was just talking about, right? Like if you're a square peg and you're trying to fit into a round hole all the time, and then you see people just fitting into round holes like no problem, you're just like, well, what's wrong with my weird square shape, right? Like I would like to have a place I fit too, but like I'm not quite resonating like all these circles around me, right? That, I guess my point is just it's been an interesting journey so far, and I really want to be public about it as I go through it. Maybe I get the assessment, and it turns out it's like I'm not autistic. I don't know. To me, it actually doesn't really make a massive difference in my life whether it's like it is a diagnosis or it's not. Like, my own experience is going to continue to be what it is. And frankly, like, to be really honest, like, I'm not struggling with like massive depression. I'm not struggling with a lot of issues that are like, symptomatic. Like, I think that I have found ways in my life to kind of navigate and to adjust and to sort of accommodate normative thinking, so that I can kind of go unmasked in a lot of scenarios. And it's only I think it's only like kind of every once in a while that there's like these little things that sneak out that would maybe indicate to people that's something I struggle with. But I do kind of feel like I honestly, just curiosity makes me want to seek a diagnosis. People who might actually doubt what I'm saying, like, and this is something you'll experience anytime you're dealing with like mental health issues or anything that's just non-neurotypical. People tend to come out of the woodworks doubting, thinking you're making things up, thinking that you're like seeking attention, thinking that like you're just kind of blowing something out of proportion that's not really a big deal, or you're not just like manning up and just accepting that everybody's a little strange, which, by the way, I do think everyone's a little strange. I don't think everybody's as neurotypical as people like to pretend they are. But still, all that being said, it's like this is a real experience, and it's definitely not something that I've come to very easily, or just randomly thought of after looking up like, oh, these are 10 symptoms of this thing, and those resonate with me. I must have this thing. I'm not trying to do the like web doctor diagnosis thing, which is why I'm actually seeking out professionals to like look and see if this is a thing. Yeah, I mean, all that being said, like it you know, I've come to this at a very slow process through lots of years of sort of getting my son through it, where it's just become more and more clear, like, hey, like there's just been little hints, like it's kind of like somebody just tapping on a door for 6 years, you know, and finally I'm like, maybe I'll open that door, just because that knocking's getting louder, right? So at this point it's time to kind of figure out what this whole thing is. That's all. But I'm totally rambling. I don't know if this is valid to anyone else's experience, but I definitely want to speak publicly about it, because like I said, I think it's important to be public about this kind of thing. And honestly, I think there's a strength to vulnerability in things. So, yeah, that's basically it. I mean, that's all I really need to do. Oh, I forgot to mention what I need to do today. So I actually have to, I would like to finish thumbnailing a page. I definitely need to do my main workout, because I biked yesterday. So I need to do my main workout, which I'll do hopefully today when I get home. And then aside from that, like I really need to start thinking about my proposal for Jacob's apartment. The first comic I did, because I floated that idea to my literary agent, like, hey, I got this finished graphic novel. Do you think I should maybe, you know, pitch that out and see if we can get somebody on board for it? It's a 128-page full color graphic novel that I finished years ago, and she was like, yeah, let's start shopping it. So I have to build a proposal in order to do that, and building a proposal is a really taxing experience, but I think that would be worthwhile. And my thinking on that too is just like the quantity of time it's going to take. Like I'm almost to the point of being like a third of the way through 2 Stories book 2. So that probably means it might be a year or so till I'm done with 2 Stories book 2. And I don't want to lose momentum, and I also like the idea of like having books come out back to back. And so it might be a good idea to kind of do that. I've spoken about that before on this vlog, but yeah. So I have to build a proposal for that, which is going to be time consuming and stuff like that. But I'd like to start that process a little bit, and then I need to send out queries and follow up with all the different comic shops that we stopped by this weekend. So that's pretty much what's on my plate. That's my Vloggins. I hope you guys are doing okay out there. What are your thoughts on, like if you've had like mental health issues or struggled with, or actually honestly have autism, and you're high functioning, how did you find out? What was your experience like? And was it as like frustrating as the experience that I've been kind of going over, where it's like 6 months ago, I'm like, hey, I'd like to like, you know, maybe get assessed for this thing. And then, you know, now it's running on 7 months and I still haven't seen one specialist who could actually do what I said 6 months ago. Maybe, hey, we could do this. If that resonates with your experience, I'd love to hear it. What's been cool is, you know, on my social media, I've been talking pretty openly about this. And so far, it sounds like it resonates with a lot of people's common experience going through this exact same thing. So, anyhow, I'm Joshua Kemble. Check out 2 Stories Book 1, which you can look for on Amazon for a reduced rate. It's 2 Stories by Joshua Kemble, Kemble. Search for that on Amazon, or you can click the link below in the description. Like, that'll take you right to the book. And I think it's like at like 70-ish% off right now, which is insane. That might change, so if you're watching this after the fact of like the day I recorded it, who knows what that landscape looks like. But for now, it's like at like almost 70% off, so go check that out. And then also, just make sure you're subscribed, you hit that bell, you hit that like button, all that fun stuff. And I will talk to you guys on the next Vloggins, or maybe on a live stream. I'd like to live stream when I work on 2 Stories Book 2, maybe a little more tonight. All right, I'll talk to you guys later, and bye.